It is the Beaver Banter podcast. My name is CJ Baumgartner. Ian Rivers is my co-host. Ian, we are back in 2024, another full year of Beaver Banter. How was your holiday? How was your new year? And how you feeling?
It was good. It was good. It was pretty quiet Christmas, pretty quiet New Year, nothing too special, you know. It was good. I enjoyed it, getting some time off and an extended weekend over Christmas was always super fun. How was yours?
Pretty good. Pretty much stayed around here. I didn't go. The furthest I went actually was up to Walker. My brother's a senior in high school. So Walker Hackensack Akeley High School had like a little tournament that they did. So they played up in that. They played a couple games, except they played Walker, who is the host school, and then they played Park Rapids area, which is closer to where we're from, or like kind of a halfway point between them and Walker. So, hoping to play like some teams from the north, teams you don't see very often, but it was all right. We got to drive up to Bemidji because we had a bunch of time to kill between the games because we got a hotel up there. So we drove through like Cass Lake Bena, which just gives me flashbacks of my Bertha Hewitt High School team losing in 2008 to Cass Lake Bena in the state tournament. I'm still not over that. Anyway, I digress. I got to go up to Bemidji and just kind of hang out for a little bit. Went to Fozzie's, got some food there. It's been a while since I've gotten to go up to Bemidji and do that, which was always good. I don't think I've been up to Bemidji since we did our podcast, but anyway, got to go up there. Got to do some stuff in Bemidji, which was really cool. Got to go hang out. And there's one thing I saw, Ian, and I sent you a picture of this when I was there in Bemidji at the mall. I was just like, my family like brought us there. So me and my wife were just kind of walking around. I saw there was Bemidji State onesie footy pajamas. That's an actual thing that exists.
And you walked away from the store with 0 of them. That's extremely disappointing, man.
I thought that could be like our official Beaver Banter like merch. Like that's just our apparel. Like that's our thing. We're the guys who do the podcast in onesie footy pajamas.
That could have been what could have been. I mean, it might still be there. We could always go up and check.
And go up and check. If somebody's in the Bemidji area and wants to buy it for us, DM us on Twitter, please.
Yep.
Please, and we'll get in touch. We'll give you like I don't know. We'll let you guest host a podcast or something like that. Absolutely. Bring it up. The people want to see us. First of all, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, cool. But you can also listen on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. And you could potentially see us in the footy pajamas, which, if you're listening on audio the entire time, who's to say we aren't?
We always could be. You never know. You can never be too sure.
Exactly. So, yeah, no, I mean, over the holiday period, it was pretty good. So, it was a little bit interesting because we were there on, I want to say it was Thursday we were there, and part of me really, really wanted to stay and watch Bemidji State do that hockey against St. Cloud State. And I'm kind of glad I didn't, because those games, like it's fun. I heard the arena was a fun atmosphere, but man, it just definitely things did not go right for Bemidji State over the weekend, specifically at home. Ian, what did you see in that men's hockey matchup with the Puppies?
Well, I mean, it didn't go well either game. I mean, both games ended 6-1. In St. Cloud on Sunday, December 31st, which is a game that I contemplated going to. If anybody's a longtime listener, they know that I went to the home and home in St. Cloud because that's down where I'm living around is the St. Cloud-ish area, a little bit south of St. Cloud. So I went to the game last year in St. Cloud, and it was a 4-1 beating by St. Cloud. So I'm glad I didn't waste my New Year's Eve going to that one because that would have been just as miserable. But yeah, I mean, Friday or Thursday, Friday, Sunday series. Friday did not go that well at all. I mean, it was 56 seconds in the game. Vidi Miettinen scores, early, and he can score. And, it was just a defensive breakdown. I can't remember exactly who it was. Maybe Kyle Loft that just chose to take the pass when there was no pass and leaving Miettinen one-on-one with poor little Leighton Road in the net. So, yeah, and then I mean from there it's Cooper Wiley. I'm sorry, 5.5 minutes into the game, and then Ryan Rossborough, 13 minutes, and by that time it's 3-0. You're thinking, all right, this sucks. It's not going well. And then get a shorty, courtesy of Yuri Väisänen in the second period, which we're all doom and gloom, watching the game because we're down 3-0. We just took another penalty and we get a shorthanded goal. But then you allow another one on a power play, a different power play, a separate power play later on in the period. And then it just from there, it was not good hockey to watch. And I can only assume that Sunday afternoon was the same way because I did not watch it. I guess it was on Fox 9 Plus. So if anybody lives within the realm of getting St. Cloud State games on Fox 9 Plus, otherwise you would have had to watch on NCHC TV. Not an ideal game, losing 12-2 over the course of the weekend. And I think it's just, it's more frustrating when as a whole you've had like 3 rivalry series, this year, Minnesota Duluth, North Dakota, and St. Cloud State. And you can't even show up for a lot of these games. I mean, 0-4 to Minnesota Duluth. Then, of course, you take one back and you get it to overtime. You have one overtime game against North Dakota, and then you follow it up with an 0-5 loss to North Dakota. So 4 of these games against your rival schools, whether it's North Dakota or teams in your own state, were just absolute blowouts. You didn't even show up for the game, it didn't seem like. And I think these were the worst of them. The Duluth game, even though it was 4-0, I think there's a lot of people that watched that and said, yeah, we were kind of like better than that, though. Like it was 4-0, but it was a lot of good goalie play and kind of same with that North Dakota one, from what I understand. But you went officially 1-7 in non-conference play. We'll still have a non-conference-ish series coming up in February against Augustana. That's non-conference, but it is conference. Doesn't count for points. But so 1-7, and your one win was in overtime against Army, who is one of the worst teams in the country. You had to take it to overtime with them. That's not good outside of the conference. And, like we said, we kind of don't care about this series, right? It doesn't affect the goal of Bemidji State at all, which is to make the NCAA tournament, to win the regular season McNaughton Cup again. This does not put a damper on that. You can regroup and you can try to come into Ferris State this next weekend and get 6 points. That's not going to affect that. But what does affect it is, of course, Kyle Loaf picking up an injury that was quoted saying it's not good. Yeah, that is a big, big blow because your defensive core is already stretched pretty thin, especially with Eric Polkamp at the World Juniors, which congrats to him. I think he has 2 goals. I could be wrong about the second goal. I know he has a couple assists and he has at least 1 goal. So good for him. But yeah, that defensive core is just going to be stretched even thinner now, especially if it is, in fact, not good for Kyle. And maybe he doesn't see the ice again this year. I'm not sure, hockey injuries especially. But it's still, like I said, it's still disappointing. You have all these games and you get a good crowd for St. Cloud State, and why would they want to come back? You lost 6-1. You got embarrassed. I'm sure the St. Cloud State fans that were there want to come back. But it's been a frustrating season. This is kind of a microcosm of that. And it's not just Bemidji State. The whole conference is terrible outside of the CCHA. I mean, Michigan Tech won the GLI this last weekend, but it took them a comeback win over Alaska Fairbanks and an overtime or a shootout win. They didn't even beat Michigan State. They beat them in a shootout. So, I mean, even the teams that do good out of conference are just squeaking by. And, look at St. Thomas. They went to Vermont, I believe, this last weekend, and they lost both games really badly. So you've still got an opportunity, and that's the silver lining here is that you're done with it. You're in CCHA play now, and you can ignore what's happened to you out of the conference for better or for worse, and you can just try to trudge forward. Hopefully the team's getting healthier. We don't know where Liam Engstrom is now. I mean, he's been injured for a couple of weeks, but we don't know where he is in the recovery process. I mean, the good news is you have Ferris State. They're kind of the punching bag if there is one in the CCHA. And then you have a week off before you have Michigan Tech. So hopefully we can get some guys back. We'll get the World Junior players back. We'll get healthy, hopefully. And we'll see where we go from there.
Well, exactly. And it's like we went into this full knowing that, like, hey, this series doesn't matter against St. Cloud State. You're not making the NCAA tournament unless you win the conference anyways. So let's not worry about it. And then you just have a performance like that where you go, okay, well, like, I know I shouldn't be worried about this in the grand scheme of things, but god dang it, this still wasn't fun to watch. Like, there's nothing that you can really feel excited about in that series.
You know what it's exactly comparable to for me?
Sure.
Is the Chargers. Herbert's done for the year.
The Chargers.
We want them to lose the game, but they go in and they get blasted by the Raiders. National TV. It's exactly like that. You want them to lose. We wanted them to lose. Let's tank. You know what? Herbert's done. Doesn't matter. Let's tank. And then they go and tank and they lose the game the only way that it would make it hurt, like 63 to 21. It's like, well, I wanted you to lose, but I didn't want you to do that. That's exactly what Bemidji State did this weekend.
For a Vikings perspective, it's fine. You're probably not going to make the playoffs with the 3 quarterbacks you have. Just play the young kids, see what happens. Like, there's nothing. What's the worst that could happen? And then the worst happens, and you go, right. Yeah. That also is in play against your arch rival at home on national television. Like, it's that. Now, obviously, this wasn't like national television, but it was local television if you count Fox 9 Plus. So, like, I get it. And, there's probably a thing too, like obviously they want to win those games because there's the rivalry aspect, there's the in-state aspect, but it's also if you can shrug it off and you can find a way to get yourself as a top 4 seed in the CCHA tournament. Right now, they're still leading the conference. So, as long as they can still put themselves in the best position possible, get a bid and see what happens. That's the 30,000 foot view of this season. But in the 20-foot view that we're at, the 2-foot view, it's not exciting. But like you said, the punching bag of the conference is there in Ferris State. There is a chance to pick up points. But how confident should we feel? Like we talked about, banked up, pole camps at the juniors. I know that, the conference is weird this year and nothing is a guarantee in this year's CCHA, but is there concern here?
That's what makes this scarier to watch as a fan, I think, is just because, like, that this is a series that you should be taking. Like, if you only get 3 points from this series, you're a little bit concerned. You know what I mean? Like, you want to collect the points against Ferris State. Who just tweeted? Kyle Kuzma just tweeted after the Detroit Pistons. They went on their 28 game losing streak. He's like, at this point, it's like, it just don't want it to be you. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be that team that has Ferris State get right against you. You know what I mean? Like, right. We're going to march in there, typical January comes, collapse, that sort of thing. That's what we want to try and avoid this year. And this is where it starts, getting in there, getting at the very least 4 points. If you can win a couple games in overtime or lose a game, if you win on Friday, get to overtime on Saturday at the very least, and lose or win and pick up 4 or 5, maybe even 6 points. But we'll see, because this is already a completely different team than entered the Thursday-Friday series against Bowling Green all those weekends ago. So yeah, I think that there's reason to believe that we can do it and shake off the 6-1 losses against St. Cloud State and just put that behind us. But it's a new year, and we know what that's meant the last 2 years in a row. And that's kind of where the frustration builds from too, is because it's been the same thing. You see it every year. And I understand why we play these difficult teams out of conference, because it's a lot cheaper to play a home and home against Duluth and St. Cloud State and North Dakota than it is to fly across the country and play a non-conference series against a Hockey East team, or an ECAC team. But when you come out of conference or non-conference play 1-7, and it's like it's an every year type thing. You're barely picking up. At least last year, we got that win against St. Cloud State, and in years
Hmm.
past, we've gotten wins against a Duluth or a North Dakota. Even you got something there, and then St. Cloud State. I think we've just started playing again somewhat recently in a series, but yeah. So hopefully there's more success in this new year. I think is what I'm.
Well, and here the Ferris State has always played BSU kind of tough over the last 10 matchups. Bemidji State is 5-3-2. If you look at kind of the overall series record, it's 18-19-6. Ferris State with the 19 wins. It's going to be closer than kind of typical, maybe, trying to put things up. But yeah, I mean, overall, they went from potentially their best series of the year in Bowling Green to not their worst series of the year, but certainly just one that kind of took air out of the balloon a little bit. What does Bemidji State need to do in the calendar year of 2024 to try and get back on the right track? We're all in the New Year's resolutions here at Beaver Banter. What does the men's hockey team need to do? That'll kind of be the last thing we touch on here with them. What do they need to do in 2024?
I mean, it's kind of out of your control, but I mean, the biggest thing is going to be getting healthy and staying healthy, man. Like, we have had so many players leave with injuries over the last month, and World Juniors players leaving. That's not injury, and we want them to go do that. But like, if we can get those two back, and then for the rest of the season we can remain fairly healthy, I think that that's a big key. And obviously, injuries are a lot of times out of your control. So that's a difficult thing. And then I think just play with more consistency. I mean, you go out there, like you said, it was, I think, easily the best weekend series of the year against Bowling Green. I mean, they were dominant in those two games. And then you follow it up with what should be the most disappointing weekend of the year if you hadn't already gotten swept by Lake Superior State this year. So, like, just a little bit more consistency would be nice, because if you can find consistency in this conference before anybody else does, you're going to probably have a front seat to winning this conference title, because as many weeks as we think are going to go by and somebody's going to latch on to being consistent and get a sweep. I mean, there's only been like 4 sweeps in the conference this year. Like, and Bemidji State has one of them, or has 2 of them against St. Thomas and Bowling Green, and they might have one of the only other ones getting swept by Lake Superior State. And so it's like, it's just, they're not that common. So if you can pick up a couple of those, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as much, doom and gloom as we've been on men's hockey, if they get healthy, they got some guys that can play. They've, had to deal with some injuries already. And even still, even after all of that, everything is in front of them to get a good spot in the conference tournament and to get into the NCAA tournament. And if you can just do that, it's a success no matter what. But you get into those 1-game eliminations and anything can happen. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view is there still is promise with this team, even though we've been a little harsh on them today. We're harsh because we see the vision. Like, we see what can happen when things go right. This is a team that's got some potential to do something really cool this season. So we'll keep an eye on that as we get into 2024. Ian, let's talk a little girls hockey, or women's hockey, I should say. They had the Battle of the Burgh, and they were able to win their first game. However, they did not win the war in the Battle of the Burgh. It's a nice little time, especially, we've talked about the non-conference and the conference for men's hockey. For women's hockey, it's the same thing. And for them to kind of get out and to play, not have to play Ohio State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, UMD, to get out of that and get to play teams that are closer to their level and pick up some confidence. I mean, mission accomplished.
Yeah, you got to do that against Robert Morris, because I think, like Lucas said last time we talked, was most tournament hosts try to schedule the easier game for themselves in the first night so they can get to that championship game. Bemidji State spoiled that, beating Robert Morris 3-1, which is great. Yeah, they won an out of conference game, which is awesome. 2 games in a row coming off of that, series against St. Thomas in the 4-0 win there. And they battled back. Janelle Evans scored for Robert Morris on the power play in the first period. And then it was Taylor Nelson in the second and Haley Armstrong, like 9 seconds later, adding another goal. And then Armstrong added the empty netter in the third period to kind of close that one out. So a good game there. And then, you run up against number 4 in the country, Colgate, because like we talked about a couple weeks ago, we're not very well versed in anything outside the WCHA for women's hockey, to a fault of our own. Colgate and Maine are a lot better than Robert Morris. So either way, you were going to be taking a step up, and you got the number 4 team in the country in Colgate, and they kind of they roughed you up a little bit. It was 6-0. They did their thing. That's a tough ask, but hey, Bemidji State had some good. It's good. You got to get out and you experience some different teams, get some experience against Robert Morris. And I'm pretty happy with how it went. You got to win. And I think that's all you can ask for.
Exactly. You get the win. And in a season where, we've talked about it, it's been tough with women's hockey. They're going through a lot of growing pains. And even though it's, like you said, you go to a tournament, you kind of get picked against the host team as the school you have the best chance to beat, but you still end up winning, and you win 3-1. You're able to at least get a win on your belt. And I think that that's important in a season that you have to play as many of tougher teams. And even you had to play Colgate in the end, which again, number 4 team in women's hockey. Like you still are running into a buzzsaw, but at the same time, you still were able to get a game against Robert Morris and pick up a win and get to do some of that and step out of the comfort zone a little bit. I think that that's the important thing, because in a season where you're trying to rebuild, you just need to get some wins, and not necessarily because, you just need to get wins to kind of keep everybody on board. Like to remember, like, oh yeah, right. Like we're building towards this, and like we're playing such tough competition. And sometimes you get like trapped in that thought of like, oh my gosh, we're never going to win another game. And you got to get out and be like, oh, right, we can win. We can do some of this stuff. And it's important that they did that. So overall, a good weekend for women's hockey and for them to be able to get that win.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you said, step out of the comfort zone of the WCHA, the rinks that you're used to, and going to Pittsburgh. And that's another thing too, is it's pretty fun, to travel outside of where you normally go. They know what Duluth looks like. They know what Minneapolis looks like, Mankato. So I think it was good for them to be able to go to Pittsburgh, play in a tournament like that. That's always a fun experience. And now you've got another week off until you jump right back in to a series against Minnesota Duluth.
Yeah, exactly. After going to St. Cloud, the beautiful metropolis of St. Cloud, how can we compare it to the city of Pittsburgh?
Yes, exactly.
So New Year's resolutions for women's hockey. What obviously, we've kind of already laid out kind of what the season is for this team, but into the kind of the second part in 2024, what are you looking forward to? What's kind of the thing that you want in the new year them to put a focus on?
Well, I think that the team is starting to gel a little bit better as the season's going on here. Maybe I'm getting the wrong vibe, but I don't think that I am. And what I want to see in the second half is I want to see either one upset over one of these top teams in the conference. Even Minnesota Duluth or St. Cloud will count for that. You don't have to necessarily go into Ohio State or Wisconsin. Or if you can't do that, I want to see you sweep St. Thomas or Mankato. I want to see you take it to them for a full weekend. I think that would be the first step that this team is headed back in the right direction, back where we were a couple of years ago when we were a little bit more competitive. So hopefully we can see that, how that's gonna come. Maybe you just stay out of the penalty box a little bit more than you're used to, or maybe you get a couple of penalties, you catch them on the wrong night and take advantage of it, put some goals past the goaltender. And, hopefully we can pick up one of those kind of statement weekends or statement wins. Like we said for volleyball earlier this year. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest season in terms of where the NSIC is at, but like for you, it was a good season because of the amount of wins you had, and you had that win over St. Cloud State also in there. So I think something like that, something to look back at this season and say, Yeah, we may not have had more than 6, 7 wins at the end of the year, but we picked up a win, in Columbus against Ohio State, or, we won one of the last games against St. Cloud State or something like that, like a
Right.
ranked
Or at the
opponent.
very least, like we took them to overtime. Like
We
we
took some points off of them. Exactly.
right. We threw them a punch, and yeah, they may have clocked us back, but it made them bleed a little bit. That's kind of the
Yeah.
thing. Can you get that in a sense? And I think I completely agree with that. Let's shift gears here to the men's basketball front as they are coming out of winter break. They got Southwest Minnesota State, and they also have Sioux Falls to bring themselves back into the new year. So, Ian, let's jump into the New Year's resolution. What are we looking forward to for Bemidji State men's basketball in 2024? What's your New Year's resolution for them?
Well, just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, keep playing with grit and toughness, and I mean, I don't know. There's not a ton to critique. And I wasn't really focused on making a New Year's resolution for them. I'm not gonna lie to you. I
Yeah,
would
I
I would
kind of threw
say
you on the spot there.
no, 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 no. That's fine. I knew we were doing this before we started today, but I would say just keep playing consistently. Gun for exactly what you had. Stay around. If you're within a puncher's chance of getting a bye straight into Sioux Falls, I think that's beneficial. But at the very least, if you're going to have a home playoff, or if you're going to have a playoff game outside of that top four, get another home game. That was super fun last year. Maybe I can be in a little bit better of a spot to actually get up there and get to that this year. If that's something that happens, I think just keep playing consistently. I think they've proven that they're one of the better teams in this conference at this point, at least a top half team at the very worst. Um, I think maybe if I have a more specific one, it's find a guard that's going to be a consistent, he's there every night. And maybe maybe we do have that, but it seems to me when I'm box score watching, it's more of, hey, who's hot? We're going to ride who's hot. There's going to be obviously the distributors coming down the floor every time, but it's more of, Sutherland and Albrecht are going to get theirs. And then whoever's got the hot hand is going to be the big guy this game. And so for the guards, and I think that's a benefit, you want to have multiple guys that can come in and do it. But I want to see somebody take charge of that area of the floor and really become more of a leader, kind of like Momo Kone was last year, somebody that you can rely on in crunch time. And we have that in the post play. And I think we can rely on a lot of these players. I mean, they've already got 2 game winning shots this year. They've proven they can do it when it matters. So, I mean, like I said, it's just so hard because this is maybe the most successful team so far of the winter sports that we've had. So it's hard to nitpick and find things for them when I'm actually quite happy with the way that they've been performing so far.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we kind of have to dive into like a little nitpickiness, but I think that's good. I think that means that we're kind of getting into the second level stuff with some of these teams. If you're a team where we're just like, I don't know, score more points and prevent the other team from scoring points like that, it's not really fun to cover. For Bemidji State, and maybe this is recency bias for men's basketball, just I can't get that game in Aberdeen out of my head where they just turned the ball over and things went south. So it's just going to be cleaning up the basketball. Having less of those turnovers in 2024. And, I just simply wouldn't turn the ball over. I mean, they're going to happen, obviously. But when you have games where in Aberdeen, we're just turning the ball over left and right, can you avoid those catastrophic meltdown games with the turnovers? Because I think Bemidji State beats Northern State if they aren't as not careless with the basketball, but if they just don't, if they just don't turn the ball over so much. It helps them get would have been a nice win in their season. When you look at the NSIC standings right now, Bemidji State slotted in at that 5th spot. Minot, UMD, MSUM, and Minnesota State are all above them. Southwest is down in that 7 spot, and Sioux Falls down in the 9 spot. So if you kind of go in tiers with this conference, and we'll say Bemidji State is on the upper end of the 2nd tier, and you have the top 3, which is Minnesota State, MSUM, UMD, on your top three, Minot, Bemidji State in that top part of the second tier. Then you have Southwest, Northern State, Sioux Falls in the bottom part of the middle tier. It's you're capable of losing this game because they're close enough to you. This should be a weekend where I know they're going on the road, and they're coming off a break. A sweep shouldn't be expected, but a sweep should be in play for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you go into the weekend and I think that a split would be just fine. I think most people on
Right.
the road against two solid teams would be fine with a split here. But you got to think about the fact that coming up next weekend is a tough date with the number one team in the conference right now, Minnesota State, who is currently unbeaten. So that would be quite the test. And so if you can pick up a couple wins here, that way you don't have quite so much pressure on your neck when you're coming home and you got games against Minnesota State and Winona the next weekend. That would be awesome. But yeah, I think I think that this team could do that. I do. I think it's on the table, just like you said. But I don't know if I necessarily expect it. And in terms of turnover margin, by the way, Bemidji State currently 11th in the conference with a negative 0.75 turnover margin. That means they turn the ball over more than they take it away. But their assist to turnover ratio is actually quite good, top 5 in the conference at 1.32, sitting just behind MSU Moorhead and Northern State. So they do get a lot of assists, but they also turn the ball over quite a bit. So if you clean up those turnovers, your assist to turnover ratio is going to skyrocket because you are already one of the worst teams at turning the ball over and at getting assists. So, I mean, hey, yeah, I think that's a good New Year's resolution. Clean it up a little bit and you will see improvement.
Exactly. So let's flip it over to women's basketball. Obviously, they're in the same spot. They're going to play the Mustangs and the Cougars over the weekend. There was a victory for Bemidji State in women's basketball because they were able to get a win over Valley City. Now, Valley City, of course, are they D3 or NAIA? I can never remember. I
think they're. I don't know.
I can't remember. The point is that like this was a schedule win. It was a kind of a get right game. They were able to beat Valley City State 67-57. Shafforgan had 16 points in the game, 9 rebounds, a couple blocks and steals. Sam Pogacek had 13 points, Alyssa Hill 12. So kind of the usual suspects getting theirs in that game. But now as they get ready for this weekend's matches, I'm going to go first with my New Year's resolution, Ian, for women's basketball. I think they just got to get more consistent shooting on the outside. Doesn't necessarily mean the 3-point percentage, but I think I'm going to kind of lean into that. Is just getting a little bit more of those outside shots. I know Bemidji State's a team that when things are going right for them, they want to be able to pound the post and do some of that stuff. But I think if you can counter that and kind of get the counter punch, and we saw it with the men's basketball team because they have great play down in the low block, and for them to have the shooting game outside, it kind of makes you pick your poison a little bit. So I think the New Year's resolution is trying to find some way to get consistency in that outside shooting game, specifically beyond the arc.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Bemidji State currently dead last in 3-point field goals made in the conference, tied with, I believe, Minot State. But yeah, actually one thing that Bemidji State is quite good at is opponent 3-point percentage. They're number one in the conference in allowing, and maybe, I mean, it's not even because the opponents are just cracking up threes all game long. They're not even close to the top of the conference in 3-pointers attempted against. But I won't piggyback off of yours. I'll go a little bit more into the rebounding category. It's something we talk about a lot here on Beaver Banter. Bemidji State currently sits 14th in rebounding margin in terms of women's basketball. That's not where you want to be with a negative 5.8 rebounding margin. So you're going to want to clean that up a little bit if you have any chance of hanging in some of these games with the better teams in the conference. You're going to want to be able to, and I think a lot of it, honestly, is crashing not allowing so many offensive rebounds. I think that's one thing, and I can't necessarily find any one stat that says like team offensive rebounds allowed, but based off of the other stats that I'm looking at, it seems like that's something that Bemidji State struggles with on the women's side. So that's one thing that I would look at for the rest of this new year, because that's something that I think the men do particularly well. And I accidentally clicked on baseball instead of basketball, so I'm trying to get over to the rebounding stats for men's basketball right now. To see the rebounding.
Yeah, I haven't seen a single rebound out of the Bemidji State baseball team this year.
Yeah, let's crash the boards. Damn it, crash the boards.
Darn it, box out.
Surprisingly, not surprisingly at all, Bemidji State #1 in men's hoops in the conference at rebounding margin, 10.7. That's crazy talk. And okay, that probably is skewed a little bit because of the Oak Hills game a little bit.
What are you talking about? Oak Hills never skews any kind of differential for any team.
I gotta go look at that, man. I gotta go look
Sorry,
at that
Oak
game.
Hills. You don't deserve that.
Oak Hills Christian. Let's look at the box score. I gotta see how many rebounds we out-rebounded them by that game.
Well, and especially too when you just factor in how good Sutherland and some of those other guys are down in the block, like just with the talents that they are being your better players. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Like men's basketball has been able to rebound and get themselves second chance points on offense, which helps out as well. And when you talk about Bemidji State women's basketball being a team as good as they are defensively against shots from outside, but when you allow the team to get an offensive board and put it back in from down low, well, it doesn't help out. Like you did the right thing and you couldn't, you just couldn't take advantage of it. You weren't able to. Right. So being able to get a little bit better in that offensive rebounding and take extra offensive possessions away from the opponent, I mean, it helps out.
So Bemidji State men's basketball would probably still be top 2 or 3 in the conference without that game in there. But guess what the rebounding margin was in that Oak Hills Christian game?
Oh, I don't even know.
50.
50?
Oak Hills had 19 rebounds. Bemidji State had 69.
Nice.
And even the Northland game, dude, 27-50. So those two games are skewing the rebounding stats a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Either way, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that Bemidji State out-rebounded Oak Hills by 50 because they are still a great rebounding team. A normal team probably would have out-rebounded them. I should look at that. I want to figure out how much NDSU out-rebounded Oak Hills.
Oh, no.
But
their corpse was just starting to rot and you dug it up again.
Yeah, no, I'm going to leave them.
Look it up now because you've already brought it up.
Right,
we've already
brought it up. I'll bring out the keyboard. I'll bring out the keyboard. Yeah, no, but yeah, like I said, Bemidji State is one of the better rebounding teams in the country, I'm sure, for Division II. And
well, when you have a guy that's like top of the country in rebounds and double-doubles, you're going to be you're going to be in a good, typically the rebounding thing will follow. But yeah, I mean, they're able to crash the boards and it helps them out. And especially when you're a team that wants to be good down low, you're going to need to have a little bit of that to kind of help things out if you're for women's basketball. But,
right.
Maybe I'm reading into that weird. Maybe I'm reading into that wrong. But anyway, I'm just kind of buying time while Ian goes and tries to look up the greatest game, if you will, in men's college basketball history. Did you find it, or did they scrub it from the record?
No, well, I found it. Let's go to team stats because that's got to be a little bit more accurate. Apparently, it was only 59-14 in terms of rebounds.
To be fair, when all your shots are going in.
I'm trying to find the turnovers. There's only 23 turnovers, so that's not like an ungodly amount. Like,
no.
So I think that means Bemidji State would beat North Dakota State in basketball. I think that's what that means.
Oh, word. My wife is an NDSU alum, so I hope she's not hearing this. But word. What? Yeah. Yeah, she's
the largest lead was 95. Nice. Okay. Yep.
Nice. Yeah.
Paint 52-10. Yep.
It's honestly, I don't mean to rip on them again, but it's a miracle they got to 10 points in the paint.
Did you just see it was Grambling State women's basketball versus like
it was like 152-18 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. I don't know why these teams are scheduling these games, man. Like,
I think sometimes it's just kind of like, all right, well, like this is all we got. Like this is the only team we can get. Or you're like, we don't want to play this team either, but god dang it, they're paying us this much money. So Grambling State, it was women's basketball, correct?
Yep.
Grambling State Tigers women's basketball. By the way, Golden Gophers did beat them. So on December 13th, 96-64. So if the University of Minnesota played CBS, and that is I'm trying to find their acronym here. Come on. They not have it? Oh, the College of Biblical Studies. That was it. So if Grambling State beat the College of Biblical Studies 159-18, and that school only scored 64 points against the Gophers, could you? What would it be?
I don't want to see it, man. I don't want to see it. I don't want to do it to those poor women, man. You know what I mean?
They
Let's
just
leave them out of this.
Stop! They're already.
Let's get Bemidji. You know what? Let's get Bemidji State to play that school. Let's get Bemidji State to play the Catholic Bible College or whatever it was.
College of Biblical Studies.
College of Biblical Studies. I think it was. I think it was Ryan Stieg who commented on Twitter and said maybe it should have been the College of Game Film Studies or something like that. It's like, good God, bro, leave them alone. They just got crushed.
Leave them alone. They're praying.
Yeah. Oh my
begging
gosh.
for mercy. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Yeah. Not ideal. I think that means we've run out of things to talk about.
I think it does.
So we didn't obviously go quite as long as we have in other podcasts, but that's probably okay. We still went long enough. We are going to break down some action next week. We will talk about men's and women's hockey. Hopefully we get to talk about some wins for men's hockey. Otherwise, Ian will not be a happy camper next week.
Yeah, I mean, if you pull another Lake Superior State against Ferris State, I swear to God. Yeah, no, it's
man tortures himself live on podcast.
Yes, my longest what the fuck ever.
You took a second, realized we were like, podcast medium.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, you know what? It's not going to be. It's whatever. Nobody cares.
Whatever.
I'm sorry if there's any children that listen to this. Do not repeat that word.
It's like a PG-13 movie. You get one.
We've covered all bases. You get one. You get one.
Make it count. Everybody gets one. Tell them, Peter. Anyway, that'll do it for Beaver Banter. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. It always helps. Like, share, subscribe, hit the little bell. Ian, have I said all the buzzwords yet?
Yeah, I think so. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Hey, smash that like button. Hey, I noticed that a lot of you guys who are watching the videos don't follow the channel, and it really hurts my ad revenue. So could you please? Anyway.